of the rainbow. And this is the blue level. This is all about leadership. So it's about thinking forward, creating value in your business, and thriving. And, I think leadership can be defined in so many different ways. And there are so many different kinds of leaders throughout the world. And I just want to touch on, so what do you understand by leadership? And I learned a lot during COVID, especially about my own leadership style. I actually stepped down as CEO towards the end of last year, but and my new CEO Janine, and she's just absolutely unbelievable. But she's very much a peacetime CEO, and she's very understanding, and she's all about empathy. But what COVID did teach me was that you kind of needed more of a wartime CEO during this crisis. And so I sort of co-CEO'd with her for the last 6 months. And as of the 1st of September, I've now let go again, because I do feel that we're back into a stable environment. But it was so fascinating for me to just understand, my leadership style and her leadership style, and what was suited for the current climate. And I think that's quite an important thing. And it actually leads me to, what is a leader's real role? And that is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. And I think this goes back to, living your vision, understanding your vision, and making sure that your team are following you, and that you have a vision that is strong enough that people want to follow you. And it's not about the money, it's about, what do you stand for? And as a leader, we really have to know where we're going, and we've got to show the way. And, last week we touched on finance with Marnus, and and knowing your numbers, and just having a budget in a business as well is such an important part of knowing where you're going. So not only your vision, but also your finances and your budget. You really do need to know all those, intricate things about leading your business and taking it to the next level. So how can you lead if you don't know yourself? Now, this was such a sort of probably 5 years into my business, I realized, wow, who am I, and what are my qualities that I can bring to this business? And I went down, as I think you all know, I'm part of EO, and I did a lot of work on myself. I've been on leadership courses, I've been on, various Enneagram courses, and, really dug deep into who am I and who am I as a leader, and therefore to ensure that I was hiring people around me that were not like me, but that could support me and be different to me. And this is just what I'm going to show you now, is just one of the tools that I have used, and I really want to say very successfully in my business. In fact, so much so that we never hired anybody without sending them on a Gallup Strength Finder. Now, I know there are various tools out there, but I think my message to you is, when you are going to start growing your team, when you are going to ensure that you're wanting to take your business to the next level, make sure that you're not hiring people that are like you, that are just going to, say yes to you and be the same as you. So I've recognized that my personality, there are 32 personality types, and your top 5 in this Gallup Strength Finder form 80% of your personality. So I realized after I did this test, that I fit into the red level, and I fit into influencing. So I needed to make sure when I built my business that I would have people that were more strategic thinking, that I would have people to build relationships with our clients, and then I would have the executors. So in the orange level are the people that, what we call in our business, the GSDs, they get stuff done. So I'm the one who's got the vision, I'm, leading the team, but I'm not necessarily going to execute. And you need all of those people in your team to ensure that you can thrive and survive. You need those people who are going to be the relationship builders. You need them to be out there building relationships with your clients. So when you know that person has that kind of personality, you know that they're suited to more of that sales role or relationship building role, or as we call them in our team, the brand experience team. They are the client facing team. But then more the accountants and the people that are actually doing the admin are more the executors or the strategic thinkers. So it's so important to A, understand yourself, and B, know who you need to hire and who you need to surround yourself with. Because as I said earlier on, building a business is like building a puzzle. You need all kinds to make it work. But I think when you understand yourself, then you know much better who to surround yourself with. So I really encourage you to do something like this. I know this Strength Finder costs about $10 or $15 online. Sometimes they have specials. So I really do encourage you to really get to know yourself so that you know the kind of people you need to surround yourself with. Okay, so what we're going to go into today is once again sort of 7 habits to ensure effective leadership. And I'm going to start off with communication. Now, this is something that, especially during this crisis, we made the decision very, very early on, almost to over communicate. In our business, we have a status meeting every single Monday morning. We have now obviously online meetings 3 times a week. And then we have a month-end meeting as well, just to communicate where we are as a business, where we're going to, what are the decisions that we've been making. And transparency in a business has been actually sort of touted as one of the values that people really, really, want to feel connected and to feel part of that business. So, I really encourage you to be as transparent as possible, but communicate to your team as much as you possibly can. Obviously, confidential information or numbers, and if you don't feel comfortable with that. But right from the beginning, as in our business, we honestly over communicated, and we just made sure that even if it was bad news, even if things weren't looking great, we made sure that we would communicate that to our team, because when they operating from a position of fear, at least if they knew the facts, at least if they knew where we were going, and at least if they knew, okay, let's work together as a team, because times are tough, it really created that bond between us, that we were all in it together. And I think that for me was really so important, that we all felt that we were all in it together. Morning, Dawn, welcome.
Hi there, guys. Sorry I was a few minutes late. I had another meeting.
It's all good. It's all good. It's lovely to see you. So we've
nice to see you all. Do you want me to add to anything you've said, Liz?
Absolutely. Please do. That would be great.
So just quickly going back to your first intro, in terms of your assessment tool, I think it's really, really, really important. And there are many of them out there. So what I've also always used, because as Les pointed out, and it's very true, you don't want to employ people that are all the same as you. I mean, that's really a recipe for failure. But you need to understand, where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, and make sure that you back up your not so strong areas with people that are very good in those areas. And I've always used a tool, and it's a very old one, by Dr. Neethling, where he looks at the left and the right brain quadrant. And as we know, and as we've always been taught, I'm sure our parents actually used to tell us that if you are a left brain person, if you're dominant in your left brain, you're more analytical, you're more inclined to look at the numbers, you're more inclined to look at the facts, you're more inclined to look at process and detail. Whereas if you're a right brain thinker, you're more creative, you have a higher sense of emotion, you're probably more intuitive, you look at the creative side of things, and you have maybe a very high EQ. I'm not saying that if you're left brain, you've got high IQ, But I think what's really important when you're growing your business, or even if you look at your current business, that you've got a good mix of left and right brain thinkers. Because it doesn't help if you've got a whole lot of lefties and you're all just analyzing the numbers. So you need a mix of the two. So there's, sorry, just on that point, and then just moving, and I won't go into too much detail there, but just moving into communication, because I think for me as a leader, it is the most important and critical part of leadership. And I read a lot, and in particular over the time of COVID, if you look at the greatest leaders in the world, and I think for me, the one is the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda. And if you, I mean, there's been so much written about her, and go and search her, because, you know, she's just the most down-to-earth person. And if you look at what made her and what made New Zealand so successful, is just the way she communicated with people. You know, she remained human. She stayed in touch with everybody. And I remember one of the talks she gave where people were interviewing her and said, what did you do over this time that was different? And she said, the first thing that I did, I made sure I communicated and I acknowledged, recognized, and thanked my team of 5 million people, which was basically the entire New Zealand. And I think that really touched the hearts of most people. So I think for me, being a leader, you know, my message is just make sure you've got people with high EQ, people with high IQ, because leadership traits are all very different. And, you know, I know this, for those of you who have the book, this chapter is the blue chapter. But in fact, the strange thing is there's no blueprint for leadership. There is no blueprint. Leaders have so many different traits, and you've got to use your strengths and surround yourself with people who are better than you in other areas. But the one thing that you must be very aware of, because it's something that I think concerns a lot of people, that you do move around the different quadrants depending on where you are. So when I first started out in my career, I was more entrepreneurial. I was very much right brain, touchy, relationships, feel, emotion, get out there and do things. And over a period of time, as the business builds up, you need to be more of a statistical, analytical, left brain thinker. And what happened is I overcorrected and I went way in the other direction of making sure that, you know, before a board meeting, I'd spend 2 days like working those reports, which in fact was wrong, because that wasn't me. And an accountant would probably have to spend an hour. So I actually had 2 down days in my very productive, you know, it was very counterproductive. It was unproductive. So I think it's really good to make sure when you're building a team that you make sure that you've got people in all quadrants. So I think to Les's point that communication and just talking the language, I made sure that every single year, all 6,000 people, we had a roadshow and we'd go around the country and I would connect with them in some way. We also had on our intranet site an Ask Dawn column where people could ask me any questions in a very secure and safe environment if they needed to. But I think when you communicate with people, I think communicate the good and the bad. It's important that your team know exactly where the business stands. So if the business is moving into the red and you're not doing well, I think it's important that you communicate with them. And many businesses failed over COVID because they were already on the brink of collapse over COVID, but they hadn't shared that with their staff. And then COVID hit, and then all of a sudden they had to retrench people, and people were saying, like what happened? So constant communication for me is important. Thanks, Les. I think I've said enough.
No, absolutely. And I think just to end on that is, you know, just to ensure that everybody understands very clearly, their roles and responsibilities. And that really does fall into this bucket as well. So that when everybody understands their roles, we actually have a document, even in our Exco team, it's called Stay in Your Lane. And it's, those are the roles and responsibilities, because often in an Exco team, or even in a management team, there's lots of crossover and duplication. And, so we have a document called Stay in Your Lane, and it really just defines exactly that's your responsibility. And so that when something goes wrong in that department, it's like, that's your throat to throttle. Okay. So, so there was such a beautiful saying that I came across the other day, and it's so true. It's when you're starting a business, there's sort of 4 steps: start, grow, systemize, and then delegate. And I think, Dawn, obviously having started Imperial, when you were 21 with, I think, 6 cars and probably 3 or 4 of you. I mean, if you'd held on to, doing what you were doing back there, I mean, you would never, ever have grown your business. And it was exactly the same for me. In the early days, it was very hard for me. I ran the Alan Gray account, and, it was my baby. It was one of our biggest accounts that we'd landed in early on in Colourworks days. And, eventually I had to hand it over to somebody, but they didn't do it like I did it. And, and I kept sort of grabbing the account back, and one day I realized, no, if I'm going to grow this business, I need to step up. And, you rise by lifting others. And without delegating to your team below you, without empowering them to actually step up and do things. And often, and it was only later on that I found that most of the time, actually, they actually ended up doing it better than me. So, you cannot grow your business without delegating and making sure that your tacit knowledge is being passed down to those under you. Because, as you go up through the ranks, so you want them to rise with you. Dawn, I know that this is a big one for you as well, because,
Yeah, so I think, for me, it's really, really important. And I think there's a beautiful message by Jack Welch that he always uses. Before you are a leader, success is all about growing yourself. When you become a leader, success is all about growing others. And you can only grow others if you delegate and empower them. So delegate is a great word, but I prefer empowerment. I think delegation is quite like an old-fashioned word, but empowering others and, holding them accountable. And, you really have to, your success and your legacy, as I always said, when I stepped down, my success and legacy was only what I left and the people that were ready to take over and step into my shoes. And I think it's really important, and we'll talk about that a little later, about the type of people that you employ. And when I left, I mean, thank God we didn't have to go outside of the organization. We could appoint within, and that was only because of sharing and in empowering the team around me, and really as much as every single last bit of information I knew, I made sure that I shared it with others, no matter how high or low they were in the food chain. Whether it was the lady who was making the tea or the wonderful men washing the cars. It was really important that all of them had a very clear message and understanding of where the business is going.
Absolutely. Okay. So, Dawn, do you want to just continue with lead by example? You're on mute. Mm-hmm.
Les, I think I'll be very quick here because I think we've touched on a lot of it. I think, walking the talk is absolutely so essential because, a lot of leaders will say one thing and do another. Unless you are setting the example, leading by the example, and actually doing it yourself. You hear in corridors and you hear people say, oh, they expect me to do X, Y, Z, but they're not prepared to do it. And I think that's really important that you lead from the front and you have your team around you, and you know, you give praise to people and acknowledge people. And I think the one thing that is really important, and the one thing that I've learned as a leader, is what do people really want from a leader? You know, they want somebody that they can trust, and they want somebody who cares about them. You know, I'll never forget a moment in my career where we had a roadshow and somebody came up and was having a long conversation, and I made a massive mistake. I said, "It's so nice to meet you. And, you know, you're obviously very new, and where are you from? And we haven't met before." And she said, "Dawn, I've actually been with the company 5 years. I've met you a couple of times." And that was a big wake up call. And I think the one thing that you need to do as a leader, you need to acknowledge that you've made a mistake. You know, I was so apologetic. I remember sending her an email, and like on the odd occasion, I would just connect with her, just to make her feel that I did care. And so I think the two things here is just be careful. You know, don't say one thing and do another. Make sure you walk the talk, and you know, make sure that you're prepared to do what you expect others to do. It's really important. And there's some really good books of, you know, leading by example. I think the one book for me is Simon Sinek, this one here, the Leaders Eat Last. I think is such a great example. He talks about, you know, being in the Navy, and, you know, the captains and all the high officials used to allow all the staff to eat first, and they ate last. But there's some incredible insights here in terms of leading by example, because respect is something that's earned. You can't demand respect. You can't, you know, expect people to respect you unless you've done something to earn it. But this is a great book, and I hope you don't mind, Lisa, if I share names of books that I believe that I like. I'm sure many of you have probably read it, but it really is a great book in terms of leading by example. So Liz, if there's something that you'd like to add to that, but I think it's such an important part because, you know, for leaders, you don't just want to be like the message or the messenger. You want to be the message, but you don't just want a whole lot of people just like taking that message out. You want them to live the message. You want them to be the message. You don't want them just to be the messenger. And that really can only resonate with them if they believe in what you say. They buy into what you say. They understand what you say. And, you know, if they don't, like there's a safe place that they can talk about it and challenge you in terms of like, why are you saying that? I think that's really important, that you give people the space to be able to challenge you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I think it's important, Dawn, you know, for our audience today who are, you know, a lot of them are startups and a lot of them are, you know, just those one-man bands and are trying to sort of get to that next level, employ that next person. And I just want to, in your workbooks this week, I just want you to, you know, really think about the difference between a manager and a leader. And I think when we start our businesses, we're very much about managing. You know, you just kind of coping with the complexity. But what we really want to get out of today is help you to move from being a manager to being a leader. So a manager will cope with complexity, whereas a leader will cope with change. And I think that that's, you know, we want to shift that mindset for you. Is yes, it's complex to run a business, but as a leader, we need to cope with change, and especially now in this climate. You know, a manager will work within the status quo, will work within the business as it is, but the leader will challenge that status quo. And, you know, that's always been my my role in CWDI, was to challenge, was to, how are we going to grow this business? How are we going to look for other companies to merge with? And I think for Dawn, you as well, you know, you had to challenge the status quo. You had to sort of, you know, shake things up in order to learn and grow. And there's no point in just, you know, being complacent almost. You need to challenge the situation so that you can move forward. You know, and a manager will ask what? A leader will ask why? You know, why are we doing this? What is the reason for this? a manager will plan for the short term. So, you know, always my COO or my Manco team, as we call it, they plan for the next 60, 90, you know, year ahead. But I'm thinking about what are we going to do in 5 years' time? I mean, it was 5 years ago that I wanted to launch my Joburg branch, do the merger, but that doesn't happen overnight. So what are the things we wanting to be a global agency now? My partner's actually moving to Portugal, so that looks like it could be coming true. But that's something that we thought about 5 years ago. And how do you, you know, plan for the long term? What is your long-term vision? Not just, you know, your next 30 days, 90 days. The manager will organize your staff, whereas a leader will align everybody to the vision. And, you know, administers and controls a manager, whereas motivates and inspires. And I think that that's such an important role of a leader. And I think, Dawn, that's where you really, you know, came into your own, probably in the last, you know, your last 10 years, where you were this inspirational and motivational leader of these 6,500 people.
Well, Les, if I can just correct you there, starting off as an entrepreneur, I was a terrible leader. I was an awful leader. I was so autocratic. I actually was young and I didn't know any better, and I didn't have mentors and I didn't have people telling me. And, you know, you learn by your mistakes. And so I was very autocratic, and again, overcorrected myself to become very much more inclusive and very much more consultative type of leader. So I think, you know, yeah, you grow. As I said, there's no blueprint for leadership. And there's so many different styles of leadership. And I think different situations, I think, Les, I don't know if you agree with me,
100%.
different situations, you actually have to, you have to change your style. I mean, occasionally there would be something that you would probably need to be a little more autocratic. You know, they're more visionary leaderships. There are times that you need to be more visionary and more strategic in terms of your in terms of your leadership. But I think the most important thing as people that are starting out their businesses, I think the one thing people want to know, that you care about them, they can trust you, and you're totally authentic. You know, what is coming out your mouth is absolute facts, the truth. And also don't be fearful to, you know, to be emotional about certain things. You know, Les, you went through this time now, and many people did, where you had to retrench people. You know, there's nothing wrong with people, you know, seeing and feeling the emotions that you really go through.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to.
I think it's about being vulnerable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very much. Yeah, very much.
You know, not always, you don't have to, you know, pretend that you have all the answers, but yeah. And then I think, you know, our goal is to get you guys to start, you know, looking at the future, working on your businesses, not necessarily in your businesses. And I think that that is really where we want to take you. And that's the importance of, you know, sort of leading by example, but also, you know, rising up through the ranks so that you can hire those more people, surround yourself with the right people. Okay. So, Dawn, confidence as a leader, I mean, absolutely vitally important.
Absolutely, very much, Les. And you know, there's this fine line between confidence and arrogance. And you know, what's the difference between confidence and arrogance? And I think confidence is when you can stand up and if you made a mistake, you can actually confidently correct it. You know, arrogance is about making a mistake and not owning up to it. So I think there's this fine line. I think, you know, arrogance is probably the worst leadership trait. You know, when leaders are confident, arrogant, and they're not prepared to listen to people, it's their way or the highway. So and again, you know, in my early days, and I'm still quite a shy person, and I do a lot of talks to large audiences. But still to this very day, like I get the butterflies and I like feel like uneasy even when we filmed Shark Tank. And I think that makes me stay human to myself and to who I am. So, you know, have the confidence to go out there and to lead your people with confidence. But it so many people I see like really confuse confidence with being arrogant and knowing it all. Um, so confidence is key, and again, there are just so many great examples, even here in South Africa, of people who are confident, and yet not arrogant. I think Adrian Gore is an example. I mean, he's got so much humility, um, and he's just, I mean, he probably has every excuse to be arrogant, but he's really not. He says it as it is. And then somebody mentioned Ian from Sorbet. I think, Deborah, it might have been you. I mean, also a great example when he was running Sorbet. I believe he's no longer there. He's not on the board anymore. But an absolute hands-on leader. And you have to get your hands dirty. And sometimes, the arrogant leader is not prepared to get their hands dirty. And I mean, I don't remember, maybe none of you were even born around that time, but the 16th was Youth Day. And on the 16th of June every year was when you had a massive strike and no one came to work on the 16th of June. For any of you, Manya, I'm sure you might remember that. No one went to work. I mean, so everyone had to pile in. And for us, we turned it into such a fun day where we would all come to work at 4 in the morning and wash cars and clean cars. And really, it gave us such a great understanding in terms of what the people do. The 16th of June in Johannesburg is freezing cold. Our depot was off the airport. It was -3 degrees. We would get to the airport and we would wash cars and clean cars. And, that also, brought the team spirit together. And also for the people who were striking, I mean, they didn't even have a choice. No one came to work on the 16th of June. It also, gave them a reason to respect you. Like, you're prepared to do the job that they're prepared to do. So, so just going back to confidence is also something that you can give to people. You can give people confidence by acknowledging their successes. People need to be recognized, acknowledged. And sometimes if you don't only do it on a one-to-one basis, but you do it on a platform where other people and their peers can hear, you have no idea what that does to somebody, just to acknowledge them in front of other people. It's such a small thing to do, but it really, the rewards are unbelievable. And yeah, I still today get things of people that tell me stories of, oh, you said this about my child and you remembered her name. And, it was such a small thing, but they probably remember it for the rest of their lives. So in starting a business and building a business and even running a small business, just make sure. I think it's easy to criticize and sometimes it's more difficult to give praise. But the reward of giving praise versus criticizing is just huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think just to end on this, confidence is believing in yourself, and confidence inspires, but arrogance actually destroys. So I think, you've got to find that fine line. And I think arrogance is telling others that you're better than them, whereas confidence is, just believing in yourself. So I think that is just, just important to know the difference. Okay, so Dawn, I think the next two are, just having a positive attitude. People follow people, I believe, that are positive. And I think it's not about being positive for the sake of being positive. It's just, having that energy and a good attitude towards something. Look, it has been I'm not saying, you can't deliver bad news or, that things aren't tough or anything like that. But I think at the end of the day, your attitude almost determines where you go in life. And I think having a positive attitude, nobody wants to be surrounded with negative people who are going to pull you down. And, one of the things that I also decided very early on in life, I was going to surround myself with people that also believed in me and, fed me that positivity so that I could also be that sort of shining light. Because when people are pulling you down, it just creates, such such a sort of negative hole that it just destroys, it just destroys morale, it just destroys so many things that in a business that you're trying to build up. So that was one of, I must say, even if I say for myself, one of the things that really kept me going was ensuring that I surrounded myself with positive people and that I did have a positive attitude towards any situation. And as you all know, during hard lockdown, we wrote this book, Hope Stories. And I think that was also just to give ourselves some positivity in this otherwise quite dire, negative, fearful place. And Dawn, I mean, I think we were both looking for, we wanted to find those stories of those people that were doing positive things to also help ourselves, and almost from a selfish point of view, to help us ensure that we could take that positivity to, our staff, our communities, and, into our businesses, or especially for me, into my business. So, as a leader, often you are giving of yourself, you are giving a lot. And, during April, as I've already said, during those very negative, fearful times, where were we going to get that positivity from? And that was really a sort of a turning point for me in deciding to write the book, Hope Stories, was because we also wanted to get that positivity. So, find something in your life that gives you positivity, whether it is writing a book, going to the gym, running on the promenade, whatever it is. Find those things that feed you, that feed your soul, that you can then, be that positive light and beacon of positivity for your team and for your staff. Dawn, did you want to add anything?
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And sometimes we do have to deliver negative messages, but it's the way in which you deliver those messages that is important. You go in fingers pointing and guns blazing. So, I mean, I always talk, Leslie's got another expression for it, but I always say, if you have to deliver something negative, or if there is a negative situation that you have to address, if somebody's underperforming and you may have to start an exit process strategy, always use the sandwich effect. And the sandwich is the first layer is the soft bread, and then in the middle is the meat. It's all the hard hitting stuff. And then you end the conversation with another piece of bread that's soft. It's just, I suppose maybe it's masking the real issue. But as long as people understand what the hard, meaty substance, hard message is. So I think that's the way in which you put your message across that's important. But positive attitude is key. But we don't want, anyone to think that we all just Pollyannas and we're running around like everything is great. But that's not really about, I think, to be real, to tell the story as it is, but with a positive attitude. And instead of talking about the problems, talk about the problem and the solution. If you bring the solution with the problem, it takes a little bit of the negativity. But positive attitude is the most infectious thing in any business. If you're positive, you create an environment conducive to success, and that's critical.
So I'm going to say it because I think when Dawn's too much of a lady. So what she's referring to, it's called a shit sandwich. When you say something nice, you deliver the message, and then you end off on something good. And when you want to, give somebody feedback, and I always feel that feedback is a gift, but sometimes you do need to wrap it in. You don't want to just, shout at them or just, not give them any hope. You want to say, look, I really appreciate that you've been trying. However, this particular project, you've really failed, but let's see how we can move forward in a positive way. And we call it a shit sandwich. So I know that'll stick in your minds next time you want to deliver a message. Dawn, you're such a lady.
Liz, can I quickly just mention a short thing around, everything that you've mentioned. I'm also mindful of the fact that most of the people in the group, as we all know, are micro businesses and startups. And the leadership qualities and the role that we play as leaders in our business include the relationships, the suppliers, all the stakeholders. You know, it's. I don't want the group to think it's only about the staff you hire, you know, because a lot of us are one-person businesses, which is perfect because you've got a great business and you have a product or a service. But just remember that all these leadership qualities and the role that we are playing as leaders go beyond, you know, into your supplier base, into your customers, and anyone that connects with you in your role as running your business. I just thought I'd just add that in.
Lisa, you are 100%, yeah.
And I think also to take it further, I think it's also about your personal life, Lisa. You know, I tend to parent by leadership. You know, my son is so sick of me talking about consequential logic. He knows more about consequential logic than, so I think it's about everything you do, walking into the spa and greeting and talking to the manager of the spa. Actually, straight away, you can actually see you can feel if that person is a leader. So it's not only about leading people, very, very important, Lisa, that it's about everything that you do. It's about how you even engage with the people on this forum. You know, it's just equality as opposed to necessarily having a whole team of people. But over some point, and I do hope that after the session, that, you know, in the next year, this time next year, we've all got back, at least most of you have employed 1 or 2 or 3 people, you know, because really that's the purpose of starting a business, is to grow it and to, you know, to employ people, so you can actually build scale. And it is difficult. I mean, I was saying to Les the other day, it is very difficult being a one-man band, you know. I came from a corporate environment where I had this huge resource that I could tap into. Legal, I mean, compliance, anything that I needed, I literally had experts in those fields. I mean, I gave up that and I moved to Cape Town, but I still had those qualities of a leader that, like, I thought, like, how do I like send a courier? How do I mean, basic things that I actually didn't know how to do. And I think, you know, again, if you have that leadership quality within you, you know, you stand up and you show up and you do something about it as opposed to withdrawing. So, yeah, good point, Lisa.
Yeah, and in your community as well, you know, leadership in your community as well. So,
and you know, I'm going to share it. I'm sharing it with our database tomorrow and on Facebook. But Brenna and I listened to a brilliant webinar with Adrian Gore and David Frankel the other night. I don't know if anyone else saw it. And it was all around leadership in, you know, good and bad times. And I was blown away about how they just shared such a authentic, humble message. And the one word that I did pick up from David Frankel was everything's attitudinal. And it's just about, one's attitude, no matter where you're at and who you communicating or connecting with. I found it really meant something to me. So I hope I'll share it with everyone as well.
Thanks, Lisa. No, I think and Dawn and I, you know, through writing the Hope Stories, we learned so many incredible, you know, wonderful leadership traits of what these people were doing to navigate their way through this crisis. And, you know, that to us, and Dawn, I know you'll completely back me up here, it was, you know, whether they were taking action or, you know, doing, you know, were passionate about what they were doing or innovating. I mean, there were so many great leadership qualities that came through in those incredible people that we interviewed. So, you know, that all went towards leadership.
most of them, with the exception of maybe 3 or 4, most of them were very small businesses. I mean, if you think of Andile, if you think of Mark Sham, if you think of all of the people, I mean, Tambarai, it's her and her mother, you know, most of them, in fact, I'm trying to think, Les, just very few of them had huge teams of people. I mean, think about it, there are very few of them. I mean,
No,
some of them
it was
had
ordinary
businesses that
people.
had collapsed, but the story that the story we captured wasn't about their old businesses that had collapsed, not at all. The story was about how they survived, now being a one-man band. And, you know, Kate and all of those stories are very much about how people survived. Many of them were one-man bands. Les, do you agree with that?
And 100% Dawn, and exactly what Lisa's saying, it was about their attitude.
Yeah.
And you know, it was that triumph over adversity. It was that never give up. It was that resilience that you always speak about, Dawn. And you know, those were the incredible qualities that came out, you know, of these leaders that we they were all mostly entrepreneurs. I mean, some were in the NGO space, but I mean mostly entrepreneurs, and the amazing things that they did.
Lisa, if you've got any of that information or notes from that webinar, I also watched it, but I actually didn't make notes because sometimes when I'm watching, like you don't want to lose anything and you make notes and you actually lose it. But just on that point on attitude, you know, I used to speak a lot about service, about customer service and user experience and everything. And I actually, you know, sometimes it was falling on deaf ears because service is about an attitude. Service, you know, if you've got the wrong attitude, you can't go out and offer a great service. I think most of you are in, you know, customer facing type of industries. I mean, that you provide, Lisa, I must tell you, you are a great leader. It might be you and Brenna, but there isn't a month or maybe twice a month or even through COVID that you didn't phone either Les or myself and say, like, check in with us, you know. I mean, that is like, yeah, it's your attitude, it's the way you are, but that's showing like you're a great leader. It's how you actually inspired us over the time of COVID.
I think just lastly before we go into it, because I think, you know, I really do encourage you to ask us questions, because I think this is, leadership is such a huge subject, and hopefully we can help you. But just in terms of appreciation, and I just want to tell you a mistake that I made quite early on in my career, is I thought everybody, the only way to show appreciation was to pay them more. But in fact, it goes so far beyond that. And, you know, when you understand your staff and you actually understand what motivates them, you know, it could be interesting work. It could be, you know, job security. It could just be that little WhatsApp, you know, that recognition, exactly what Dawn's talking about earlier, public appreciation and showing that appreciation for somebody on a public platform. We do something in our business called Rate Your Mate. And it's not about what, you know, we're saying about one or two people that we're coming into, we're working within a team. It's about what their peers are saying about them. So at the end of every month, we have this Rate Your Mate, and, you know, it's how we can show appreciation. But flexible work schedule, that's become a huge thing now. And, you know, this work from home, but how do you then allow this flexibility, but still ensuring productivity? You know, financial bonuses, obviously the financial side is important, but understand your staff and understand what makes them tick. And when I realized that, and I realized, wow, giving this person a spa voucher or giving them money or whatever the case may be, when actually all they really wanted was a half day off or a day off, it was such a realization for me that different people want different things, and you need to just understand them and understand your team, so that you can show them appreciation in the right way. But I really want to just almost end off there, unless Dawn, you just want to, I know gratitude was a big thing for you as well, just close off on that, and then let's just go to Q&A.
Yeah, Les, no, over to you. I think also just to your point, I think the greatest motivator that we gave our staff, they could actually have 2 duvet days a year.
Yeah.
and they could choose those duvet days. Obviously, if it was a month end, they couldn't. And you have no idea how excited people used to be to have a duvet day. Like, oh my word, and they could choose it whenever they wanted to, as long as they just inform people. And they could have 2 duvet days a year. And that was more than giving them a check for R1,000. That they could do something valuable with that time. Stay in bed or whatever. We used to call it a duvet day. So yeah, so it's not the monetary value and the financial give outs. It's just giving them something that they love. And also with incentives, what we used to do is we used to find a way through the wife or the husband or the spouse of things that they needed. So at year end, instead of giving somebody a check of R2,000 as a bonus, we would find out what it was that they wanted, and we would rather give them a gift. And it's so strange. The one was a woman. Her husband told us she wanted the roof painted desperately, and he said, we just don't have money to paint the roof. And we had the roof painted, and she got home that night and her roof was painted, and like it was just the most awesome thing. So give people what they want. And we always do tend to feel that they want financial gratitude, and it's actually not. It's things that, so I think to myself, every time she walked to her house and saw her roof painted, she actually had that beautiful warm feeling, that she had worked hard for her roof to be painted.
Yeah, no, that's lovely. Okay, so I see it's very lovely to see that you guys have been engaging in the chat box. Obviously, it's hard for us to read it because we're so busy talking. But are there any, just put yourselves off mute, are there any live questions? We're very happy to take live questions. I know Lisa does need to leave at past because it's her daughter's 18th birthday. So congratulations to Lisa and on your daughter's birthday. But we have got 8 minutes. So please, guys, give us some questions. About only needs, what an amazing. Who wants to ask some questions? Don't be shy.
Okay, I'll ask one. What about, what is your guidance and advice in terms of what we're going through in terms of uncertainty? Now it's the pandemic and we had the lockdown. In a few years down the line, it might be something else. So from a leadership perspective, what would you suggest in navigating the uncertainty as best as you can?
Liz, can I just quickly, maybe just
please go.
Even in our book, we had the front page was, navigating or strength and courage through times of uncertainty. And I said to Les the one day, Les, I've been talking about uncertainty and turbulent times for as long as I can remember. We wake up in the morning and there's uncertainty. Obviously the pandemic is at a totally different level and it's unprecedented. But the same principles apply, exactly the same principles apply. Don't overreact to a situation, make sure that you're communicating, make sure that you're staying true to your purpose, making sure that your brand and what you've built continues to stay alive. And it's really no different, but it's just on a much larger scale to, managing. Don't forget, just before the pandemic, we went into recession. We were junk status, and then we went flat bang into recession status. And there were just so many jobs that were lost. So yes, maybe COVID exacerbated and brought it up on a much larger scale. But, everything about business and about being an entrepreneur is uncertain. We live in uncertain times, and I think we need to apply the same principles that we would apply if tomorrow you had a flood and you lost all your stock or whatever. How do you go about it? And it's just thinking logically and taking, each step at a time, and just keeping people informed. And I go back to, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, and some of the very simple things that she did to lead through those times. It was no different to how she managed the Christchurch. Do you remember the shooting in Christchurch? I mean, the principles were exactly the same. There were very different issues, but actually what she talks about is she had done it well then over the Christchurch situation, and she literally applied the same rules. So I think for each of us, they're going to be different. Some's about protecting your brand, some's about putting yourself out there, some's about, improving your social media status. But I think we've all learned, and I think in South Africa, I talk a lot about resilience. I mean, we are very resilient. We are a very resilient nation. And we learn to, handle things that many other countries, I don't think, would be able to do. So, we have, crime, and we have corruption, all of those things that we've had to deal with. And I think we do a very good job of doing it. This happened so quickly that I don't think we were prepared. But I think we must do exactly what we would do if we were handling any situation that was a little or seemed a little out of our control. Les, I don't know if you want to add to that, but I think, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think just in finishing, it would be remiss of us not to mention empathy as a quality for leaders. Because, and I also think during this crisis, Lisa, to your point, leaders will become sort of counselors in chief. I mean, I actually put a counselor in place for some of my staff. And I said, it's completely anonymous. Here's her number. And then I phoned the counselor. I said, send me the bill, because I just felt that, having somebody to talk to was so important. And if I wasn't qualified, or, I'm not qualified as a psychologist, but if I could help my team just feel that empathy, understand that what they were going through, and put things in place to help them, I think that would be so important. I mean, if you don't have those kind of resources, but I just think that showing empathy during this time for these trying times, I think is such an important quality for leaders.
And maybe
Les?
Sorry, no. Just also, if you look at, I mean, I always use the example of Apple, and we know that Steve Jobs, he was a great innovator, very creative, but he will go down as one of the worst leaders. I mean, he wasn't. He was very autocratic. He actually took people out openly in front of everybody. But give him a stage to talk about his latest innovation, there was no one to beat him. But he didn't ever have his team following him. And I think that over COVID, I mean, the late Steve Jobs, but I don't think that he would have coped as well, because he didn't have his team around him, as somebody, the new CEO who had worked with Steve Jobs for a long time. His name's Tim Cook. And in fact, I think he's written a book, but he had a lot of EQ, and he kept communicating with people, and he kept talking. He had people doing the innovation and the design, but he led the people. And I read an interesting article the other day, would Steve Jobs have been able to have coped and navigated through COVID, as well as the new CEO? Well, he's been there for a couple of years, Tim Cook. And I actually don't think that he would have. So I think that, those autocratic leaders over this time probably failed more so than the ones that were, to Les's point, more empathetic, had a higher EQ. And EQ is not just about the emotional, but it's me understanding the way you feel, and me, putting myself in your shoes. So if you look at situations of leadership styles, in terms of Steve Jobs, if Apple wanted to create the latest tablet or whatever, he was the best person. But to actually move the company forward and lead the company through crisis, and Apple have had many crises over the years. You know, like in terms of sustainability was more the new leadership in Apple. So I think if you have those qualities of high EQ, empathy, you know, in touch with your people, talk to your people a lot, I really think that you have more chance of overcoming and surviving through COVID than if you actually keep everything to yourself.
Okay, so I just
Karen,
want to
sorry,
challenge.
Les,
Yeah?
sorry. Karen,
No.
Karen has got a question. If you can just give us some time.
It actually wasn't a question. I just wanted to say two of the things that you talked about that really resonated with me were when you said about solutions and positive attitude. And I think, you know, I deal with big corporates, and you often think that they know better than you. They've been doing it for years and years and years, and often they don't think outside the box. So their solution is in one direction. And I think that sometimes when you're able to look at a problem not as a problem, but what is the solution, and whatever you do, you'll get to that solution, is important. And when I deal with my staff, it's also about, okay, you've made a mistake or something's gone wrong. How can we fix it? What is the solution? And I think that is so important. And also the positive attitude. You know, I'm in an industry at the moment that is really dead. But if you're innovative and you change, you know, I spoke to a customer the other day and I said, but have you thought of looking at our products like this, because this is what the consumer needs? And he said, no, actually I didn't. I just thought that category was dead. So I think really, really important, the positivity and solution-based as opposed to problem-based.
100%. Absolutely 100%. So I just want to close off because I am conscious of the time. So I want to challenge all of you in your worksheets that Lisa did email to you. There's a lovely little worksheet there that asks you, do you have what it takes? And I want you to kind of be honest with yourselves. And then what are the 3 leadership qualities that you feel that you need to improve on? And maybe that's just something that you need to reflect. And these are the things that I don't do so well. These are the things that I need to reflect on. And so my challenge to you is, think about, even ask your families, ask your community, what do you think are the leadership qualities that I need to improve on? And then what actions are you going to take, to ensure that you are, you become that effective leader? And I think that, we want to move you towards that effective leadership. And, hopefully some of the things that we've said today will just make you think a little bit more carefully about, how are you leading yourself in your family, in your community, in your team, in your business, and in yourself.
Thanks, guys. Can I share another book with you that is amazing? I mean, I'm sure you all know Malcolm Gladwell, and I'm not here to sell any of these books, but Outliers. I don't know if any of you have read it. It's just amazing. If you enjoy Malcolm Gladwell, he really is amazing. And he talks a lot about leadership, and he gives examples of different companies and industries and individuals who have just taken a totally different approach. It's a very inspirational book. It's a really, really great book. So, I mean, I'm happy to share like some of the books on leadership with you, because not only is it about leadership, but I think, we get inspired by listening to great leaders, as you did, Lisa, with Adrian Gore. I mean, I can listen to Adrian Gore like all the time, and David Shapiro. I mean, they really are like great leaders, and you just get inspiration. So I think, put yourself out there in terms of as many webinars. I mean, we're so fortunate to have all these great people speaking to us these days, which before it was like almost impossible unless you were on the A-list. You weren't exposed to these people. But I think more than anything, listening to great leaders is just so inspirational.
Well, I just would like to end off by just saying to Dawn and Les that, I'm mad about both of you, and you are both very inspiring leaders. And every time we have a conversation or I engage in this forum, I learned so much from you, and I just really appreciate our collaboration, our relationship, and really just the open engagement that we do have. So thank you for this awesome hour, and it's been an absolute privilege, and we look forward to our final session next week. It's been an amazing 5 weeks so far. So thanks for everything and everything you're doing for the entrepreneurs in the group.
Thanks,
Such a
Lisa.
pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Happy birthday, and thank you for having us. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so
Have
much.
a lovely
Chat
day,
soon.
everybody.
You guys
Take
too.
care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.